Hi, this is Viktor Devonne, and you are listening to Season 3 of WEBurlesque, the podcast. Thank you so much for your support over the last year and a half. This is pretty exciting. We've done more than 60 regular episodes with a couple of bonuses along the way, and I have a bunch of episodes in the queue that I can't wait for you all to listen to. And I still have more interviews and conversations planned, so it's going to be a great season. I already know it. This is your reminder, however, that I do all of this by myself, and frankly, a little help and support goes a long way. As artists, we throw in a tip bucket, and any money that goes in helps keep the dream alive. So if you want to help out, you can go to patreon.com/WeBurlesque, and you can pledge as a regular monthly pleasure, or you can throw me a couple bucks on Cash App, or you can throw me a couple bucks on Venmo. It's Victor Viktor Devonne Devonne, and that's just the way it is. So thank you so much, and again, enjoy the rest of the season. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Michelle Donato, Stormageddon, Rob Starabin, and Kelly Blue. If anybody else would like to join that list, I will thank you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
This call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect at this time.
Okay. Welcome to WeBurlesque, the podcast. I am your host, Viktor Devonne, and today I am talking to drag king and drag-lesque superstar, Fox Squire. How you doing, Fox?
I'm good. Nice
Good.
to be here. Excited.
Now I'm calling in. You're in New York, right?
Yes, I am.
At the
New York
present
king.
time.
That's correct.
Yep.
Well,
you've made your way around this country a little bit. Have you always been in New York, or are you a native?
I am not a native of New York. I actually was born in California,
Okay.
and lived in St. Louis, and then put my roots down here in New York. I'm going to say about 2006, 2007, and have been here ever since. I just came out and visited and fell in love and was like, where I'm going. College and came here.
What was it specifically about New York that spoke to you?
Coming from a place, especially St. Louis, the Fox roll. I don't know if you've heard the phrase before, but it's definitely a country phrase. Where Western came.
I'm actually, hang on, Fox. I'm getting a little bit of distortion on your voice. I'm trying to.
Okay.
I don't know if it's
No
just
problem.
what I'm hearing or if it's on the recording. So, just say that one more time. When you were starting about what was the expression
just
you
saying
used?
that. So from Missouri, after pretty much the sidewalks roll up after 10, which basically means that there is nothing to do. There's not a lot to do aside from very specific parties and things like that. If you want food, if you want to go see something, those are not options after about 10, 11 o'clock at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
And coming here, I still remember being just in awe of like, I remember talking to my friend and I was like, man, I would love an orange right now. He's like, let's go to the bodega and get an orange. I was like, well, it's 2 a.m. He's like, they have oranges at the bodega. And the idea of just having access to fruit at 2 a.m. was fantastic. And so I loved the hustle and bustle and the thriving nightlife, and these were all things I didn't have while I was in Missouri and while I was in college too, because I went to school in college as well. So I fell in love with it, and I loved the pace of it, and that really just drew me in. I was like, yep, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, I feel good. I feel settled. I'm coming back here. I'm going to live here.
Were you always a performing arts person, or did that come once you moved here?
I always was in theater, even middle school. Yeah, even middle school. I still remember I was one of the kids in, we did You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And that was and we did a Weisenstein kind of colorblind casting of this Jew. I don't remember the name of the play, but it was a Jewish play by this Jewish author, and it was fantastic. So I always had this kind of like bug to audition and try stuff out. And New York definitely offered me a lot more opportunities to get my like hands dirty into that world while still going to work every day. And even when I was freelancing, picking up gigs and doing performance gigs and stuff like that. So it's been in my blood for a while. My father used to to impress my mother and impress others. He used to stand on the table at his school and eat cigarettes because he was always just the showman doing something crazy and wacky. So I'm sure I got that from him, and my brother is the same way. So it's in my blood for a long time.
Did you have to fight for attention since you're all a bunch of personalities?
No, I didn't grow up with my brother. My sister was definitely quieter compared to me. I was the crazy, outgoing, scientific one. So it was more of me just like putting it out there, and my parents were just supportive of my crazy things I did. I still remember in high school I really wanted to learn how to do makeup, and so I took a fantastic makeup class in high school with the theater producer and director, and they then hired me for the big musical, which is unheard of for a high school student to be in charge of musical, not just the purchase of all the actual makeup and budgeting it, but also I designed every single character myself. And my father, we were city kids, and I was going to what's considered a county school, so it was not nearby. And my dad drove out in between his jobs and sat through the whole thing, had flowers for me at the end, just always encouraging me to be my weird, wacky self. So it was never really a fight. It was more of like I always had them on my side, so it was always really easy to just be myself because I had these people who were like, yeah, do that. Okay, still get an A? All right, great. Keep going. All right, keep going.
So you felt encouraged. You felt motivated and pushed forward through that.
Yes. Even though they didn't understand it, they were always like, okay, but this is, okay, you're doing this now? All right. From doing track to studying chemistry, all of it, they didn't really understand all the different crazy facets I was doing, but they knew that they were always there to support it.
Well, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I know there's such a collection of individuals, some that we work with as colleagues and some that are still coming up into their own as performers, who don't have that and don't necessarily. I always consider myself extremely lucky that I had a family that, again, didn't always get it, but what they didn't get, they were still there for. As long as I wasn't hurting myself, and that as long as I think that I was surrounding myself with people who wouldn't necessarily protect me, but at least that I could, be safe around. That was always key. So when did you start? I don't know. I guess I'm always fascinated by people, especially in the drag world, because there are some people who find out who they are either in dress-up form or through makeup or sometimes through the music and how their physicality moves into that. And since you are such a physical performer in your work, what came first for you? Were you dressing up in family clothes? Were you lip syncing to specific music on the radio? What was your start?
So I lip synced to I memorized songs all the time, so I was lip syncing all the time to radio songs. Actually, in my house, we did not listen to any non-secular music, so it was all these Christian songs all growing up.
Really?
It was Christian.
I
grew up on Jesus Freaks. Many people will know that. Amy Grant was
of course,
a big
classic
part of our household.
But then she sold out and she started doing pop music, so.
Oh, yeah, there was that whole, oh my gosh, it was like the biggest controversy through our church. Oh my gosh.
Oh. She replaced it with all the babies, and she even, baby. Oh.
It was even so far that I still remember one of the girls at my Bible study was swearing to me. She's like, she doesn't actually say baby, she says baby. And I was like, what? What did you just say? She's like, yeah, it's not actually baby, it's baby. And I was like, okay, you have hit all sorts of weird heads now that I don't know where you're going with this.
I believe, if I remember my pop-up video correctly, it was written about her daughter. So at the very least, it is secular.
It was not. I mean, it was secular in the sense of it wasn't a song about God. But it's not that I ever disliked it. I mean, and actually, I still listen to probably quite a bit of like just music in general. My favorite type of music is jazz. Like my favorite artist of all time is Louis Armstrong.
Oh wow.
So I didn't, like in my head, I could take or leave the Christian things I was hearing on the on our version of the radio. But it did put me at a bit of a, now that I'm performing in nightlife and all sorts of stuff, had I still been only limited to one style of music, it would have put me at a loss, because sometimes I need to be able to connect with my audience with the music. And if I choose something so far off the cuff, they're going to be listening to it like, what is this? And I can't take them on the artistic journey I want them to go on with me. But I say that, and I've used music that was in Spanish. I've used music that, wasn't always the thing people thought would go with that costume or go with that act. So I think now that I've gotten better at choosing where I want the audience to go, it's getting better. But in the beginnings, I definitely had a hard time picking up the pop songs and stuff, because I had been exposed to only secular music, which if anybody ever actually did a chronology of my acts, I think they would notice I did not do a pop song for a very long. It was a while before a pop song popped out of my performances. Most of them were these off-cuff crazy things, and they were songs people knew, but they would be older songs, or they would be kind of have these weird feels to them, or they wouldn't necessarily, like I said, go with the costuming and stuff like that. So I would say that because I had the challenge of trying to express myself without utilizing pop music, I think I'm able to tap into that when I'm making up my my artistic vision. But I like that I now have a wider span of it. And growing up without those, access to Milli Vanilli, I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it definitely helped shape me into a more creative thinker when it came to getting my point across. So I can even tell you, my first secular song was La Bouche, Dream Lover. I heard it on the box.
Oh, wow, the box.
First, yeah. I know I dated myself, but yep, I heard it on the box. And that was the first song that I heard that was not a Christian song. But I would just devour music. And then I got really into classical music from doing choir at my school, and just fell in love with that. I always loved a costume, and I would wear costumes as everyday clothes. My parents didn't really understand it, but my dad was very encouraging. He used to buy me these crazy costumes. I had a the old 1940s flight suits, the thick ones with the heavy zipper that they jump out of airplanes, the parachute. I had one of those as a kid. Just had it. My dad bought me Buck Private Army stuff, those nice 1940s jackets. I had a set of those. He was just always encouraging me to go ahead and just be different. And my mom she didn't get it, and she was just like, oh, you don't need to buy her this, because I stood out so often. But they both would be like, okay, I mean, she's not doing drugs and she's okay. So let's get it. It's all right.
Were there any questions about gender at the time, or was that simply they were just costumes, they were just outfits?
They were just costumes and outfits, and I had a tendency to usually wear more feminine stuff. The only time I didn't do that was in high school. So in high school, I was ready to be rid of relaxing my hair, which is where an African American or Black American straightens their hair with a relaxer, which is to relax the natural curl of your hair into straight hair. It's to me, a little bit more colonization and Europeanizing of things, but I don't know that my mom had those thoughts. She was just trying to make it easier for us to be in this predominantly white school and live our lives and all the other things, trying to give us
very popular as well. It was you would see it. You would see that in
and I was born in. I mean, like I was an 80s baby. I'm definitely at the very barely beginnings of the millennials. So my mom was still of that ilk that like that was something that needed to happen if you're going to like rise in economically and financially and all those things. And so my senior year of high school, I decided that I didn't want to have straight hair anymore and I wanted to cut my hair off. And my mom was supportive but inquisitive. So I had to do this whole big research paper and present it to her and explain how I was going to take care of my hair. And so senior year, I cut all my hair off, and I had one like very male style outfit. It was a brown button-down shirt, these heavy, thick brown shoes, and green khaki pants. And my parents, I think it was loving, even though I don't think my dad did it. I know my mom, she would call me Lester. And she was like, oh, Lester's out today. And that's kind of how they just kind of jumped it off.
She gave you your first drag name.
My first drag name was Lester. That's true. Very true. And so I was always dressing up and trying out and kind of playing with the ideas of gender, playing with the ideas of costumes and makeup and things like that. It wasn't until I started performing here in New York and I had an idea for a performance and needed a male character. And so I just kind of made this character up, hadn't really thought anything more of like, okay, I'm just going to put on these clothes. And I had hired a friend of mine to be the female counterpart to this. It was, the act itself, I don't even do it anymore, but it was, I can't even remember the song, but the basic premise is that this woman who is very much a butch style of woman, or butch would have been the term I used at that point, and she has clearly gone through some sort of hardship, probably with another lover. She's drinking, and she calls somebody, and she mimics opening the door, and there is this woman in a trench coat, and she starts dancing for her, and she's, like getting into this, and so the woman's like, oh, okay, I can be with her, and then the butch woman strips out of all of her stuff to reveal that she's actually a woman underneath, which is not something that the stripper who was hired was okay with. She goes to leave, makes a beeline, and then the butch woman then grabs her kind of by the waist, not in any kind of provoking fashion, just kind of like puts her hand around like, please don't do this, and she lays her head in her lap, please, offers her more money, and so she kind of gives up and decides to stay, and that's where the act ends. And afterwards, I had a lot of really positive feedback on like the storyline, but also just the look I was serving that night, which had not been the preface of it. It was just kind of more of I wanted to tell that particular story. And from it, I did another male style act, and like it was just like boom, oh okay, boom, and to fast forward to now that I have 3 different titles, one of them being the New Jersey Master of Lip Sync for 2019, Mr. New York Royalty for New York in the Starlight Pageantry system, and then Mr. Nerd NY, which is the first ever in that system, and all of it just came forward.
You're the inaugural Mr.
Trying
Nerd,
to tell the
right?
story. Yes, first ever Mr. Nerd New York. That is correct. It still kind of tickles me about it because I wasn't in my head. I wanted to win, so I put in one effort, but I had no thought of what that meant. I had not done any pageants since college, and the idea of reigning over a set of things did not come into play, whereas now I actually last weekend was a judge for a cis pageant who are there by my sister queens, in the Starlight Galaxy system, which is part of the Starlight royalty system, and was not in my purview that I would be doing this. And I'm their first drag king to hold the title. And they've been nothing but open and welcoming about the whole thing. It is something different, but I like the CEO and the founder have assured me and like been right there and be like, oh yeah, I'm happy you're here. I'm happy that you put this forward, and I like your style. So they were the ones who invited me to come and judge. So yeah, all of that was not something I was looking at like, oh, I want to do this thing over here. It just came to me, and it all started with a little bit of lip syncing to some Christian songs and dressing in some guy's clothes, dressing up in I remember I had this Chiquita banana skirt that I used to wear that was like giant yellow shirt and huge skirt. Wore that to school. Like these were the the normal costumes that this all came from.
I think I worked with you, for the audience knows, I do know Fox. We have met and worked together a number of years now. And I first knew you as a burlesque performer. And I think the first drag king act I saw you do was at a food-based show where you did Would You Please Pass the Biscuits? Which I think, do you do the Andre Williams version, do you know?
Yes, I do. It's
yes,
the Andre Williams version. That's correct. It's very much it's a satire song. It wasn't a satire genre. It was just a satire song that came out.
When you did that act, was that a song that you had already known? Where do you get the music that you build on?
So I was that particular one. I was at a I think I was at a bar club type situation, and it was a DJ, and they were mixing things in together, being a DJ, and I heard a snippet of this song, of that version, that song, and I was like, what is that? Because I want to know so much more, and I found it. It was actually kind of difficult to find because it's been covered so many times, but I was like, no, like every time I'd hear it, I'd be like, no, that's not the right one. And after some scouring, I found it, and I fell in love with that. I thought it was so ridiculous. It totally spoke to me, and I was looking for something for that particular food thing, and I had seen other people doing I'm not a messy performer, just in general, whether when I was doing burlesque or now that I'm doing, I'm a pageant king, and I'm just not a messy performer. So I was like, how do I do food without it being messy? Because everything I had seen kind of up to that point had been kind of messy.
Yeah, it's an easy avenue to go. Yeah.
Right, and so this was the perfect, non-messy, funny, food-related thing for me to do. And it just made so much sense that I was like, okay, here we go. Here we go.
And it's a spoken song. Like there's very little like melody that you actually are doing. So that is actually a significant challenge. How do you just drill the song over and over again and make sure you get the right pauses? Because with a song, sometimes I think with music it's a lot easier because if you follow how a song is traditionally sung, you can sort of fill in the words as you go. So you can sort of half learn it if you need to. But with a spoken, everyone's eyes are pointing at you, and especially since spoken drag has become something of a it's at a certain popularity where people are being really critical about it and paying a lot of attention to it. How do you prepare yourself for something like that?
For that one, it was a lot of drilling. Now that I've done it more often, I would say I have an act where I rapped for the first time, and that was probably my most challenging thing. The one that we're speaking of, because it was talking a little bit, it was like learning lines to a play. Only I was just doing a big monologue, so it wasn't that bad. I don't go. There are a few like kind of quote unquote musical cues in there where you'll hear different things, but once I hear it enough times, it just sinks in, and I just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. For the rapping, that was super difficult because it is syncopated. There are beat exchanges that I like that you have to just be ready and pop up for, and your mouth, it just has to move so quickly. After doing something where that satire version where I'm like just kind of talking out a monologue, the rapping was hard because I couldn't just talk.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be with the beat of the music, which is similar to singing, but now you got to talk on beat.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some times in that Pass the Biscuit song where he's not talking on beat, he's just talking.
Yeah.
And the character itself for Pass the Biscuits is someone who I knew. Even Fox, as myself, it's a reminder of this uncle I kind of had and never had. There's
mm-hmm.
bits and pieces of different men through my life who I'm like, yeah, that would be Uncle Tony or my Uncle Adrian, or just like my different kind of uncles and my father and all these people. Whereas the rap, it was so outside of my comfort zone,
mm-hmm.
but it fit so well with what I wanted to portray in that moment for my Deacon Squire act, that it was just there. So my biggest thing I rely on is probably just the drilling. I've found also that if I write out all the lyrics, like handwrite the lyrics, it just sinks in a lot faster for me and a lot better and cleaner. It's one of those weird, I'm just a tactile but also visual kid. Mm-hmm. So if I can write it and see it, it just hits that brain and those neurons fire so much easier.
The world-famous Gilman Hotel is proud to announce the grand reopening of the Persephone Ballroom. Located on the hotel's second floor, this luxurious ballroom will set the standard for years to come with its modern decor, five-star cuisine, live orchestra, and efficient staff. Gentlemen, take a break from the ballroom's extravagant setting and enjoy a brandy and cigarette in our handsome smoking lounge, while you ladies can relax and rejuvenate in our deluxe powder room. Make a weekend out of it by staying in one of the Gilman's magnificent guest rooms, each complete with its own personal bathroom, perfect for extended getaways. Worried about being out of touch with loved ones? Don't be! All 10 floors of the Gilman are equipped with local and long-distance telephones. This exclusive hotel is located in the heart of Gilman Street. You're never more than a short stroll from all the best restaurants, shops, and theater. Don't think twice. Visit the Gilman and see for yourself why people wish they could stay here forever.
Have you done like an hour-length cabaret show yet as a drag king? Or you've done only individual segments?
I've done individual segments for just about everything. There are. I don't know if I would. I've never done an hour long. That's the short answer. But I also really like sharing the stage with others. So I don't know how excited I would be to do something like that. I would want other people there, mostly because it's tiring.
Sure.
There's a lot, like between, the tucking of this, the pushing of that. Doing a whole hour is a long time, but I have been in drag for that long. Like even, for example, this weekend, I was in drag for about 3 hours, and I was the interview judge. So I was in drag the entire time because I'm wearing recession crown, and it was a lot to just be in it for that long and not be performing. So getting in and out, I would say probably the pageants are closest to something like that because you're literally in your drag and you're just going from look to look to look to look. And then you do have one performance in there, but you still have to be on the whole time. So no, I haven't done a singular one-man show, but I definitely have been in my drag for a very long lengths of time and long spans of time, because I believe in presenting myself my whole self every time.
The full package,
Yeah, exactly. Like if I'm going to do it 100%. I don't want to no half stepping. Even to the point that I'll make sure one of the kind of rules I have with myself is that when I'm out in any of my crowns or sashes or medallions, my nails are done. I just found a really good manicurist, and my hair is together and cut and fresh, because I like to give that same dapper quality that you'd get with Fox on stage, or if you're meeting him, or any of this stuff. And I'm just that type of guy, all the time.
I find that when I've spoken to a few performers who do drag or who work a lot with drag kings, and I don't necessarily want to call them out because they haven't given me permission to use their name, but one of them said that what was interesting to them is that a lot of drag kings, particularly cis women who become drag kings for their performance style, take on a certain masculinity even in the backstage or the dressing room, and sometimes it sort of feels like the way that they behave is sort of learned behavior from how potentially toxic masculinity has infiltrated their lives as cis women, or how it is. How do you approach your masculinity, if at all, when you are, putting on the suit, when you are getting ready for the gig, till when you're actually on stage?
So for me, when I'm prepping and getting to that place, let me back up. So Fox is definitely a very dapper gentleman at all times. That is Fox. He is a respecter of all people because he wants all the people all the time. He's a charmer, and he really enjoys life. So as far as the toxicity of masculinity, I would think that Fox's probably modern role model would be Karamo from Queer Eye, because I never think of Karamo as effeminate. And not that there's anything wrong with being effeminate, but Karamo is definitely a man to me. I'm very aware he is a gay man, but that does not stop him from just being a day-to-day man, whether he's interacting with a woman, a man, whoever. He always has an even keel about himself. And that's one of the things when Fox is together, his mannerisms are going to be different because he is a guy. He's going to sit with his legs wide. He's going to take up some more space. But as far as the toxicity of I've got to be bigger than you, I've got to be stronger than you, he's not worried about that. He is, and I am always myself, and I want to meet you. I want to talk to you. And who knows, I want to kiss you later. Like, we don't know how this is going to go, but we leave ourselves open for all things.
Right.
And I think that openness that I'm seeing grow so strong in a lot of the masculine people in my life, whether it be my little nephew or whether it be the queer and the queer identifying and masculine presenting, probably cis males in my own life. It's like, well, you know, like, I don't have to put anybody down. I don't have to take up more space than necessary. Just I take up my space, and I can hold my head high, and I want everybody to hold their head high. I don't necessarily think that Fox is the type of person who's going to walk in a room and try and out and swing his dick around.
Okay.
Nor would I ever do that. But I definitely think that he comes into the room and people are like, hello.
Yeah.
Like, he definitely, and I definitely.
The charisma just suddenly enters.
Right. Yeah. I think the like, I've been playing a lot of D&D, so my charisma points are definitely, my charisma modifier is probably higher.
Just natural 20s every time.
Yeah. Yes, just rolling it. Boom. That lovely natural 20, my critical role there. But I think that a lot of the drag kings that I see, they kind of put it on as like, okay, I have some, and it's all about how you're using it. I know many drag kings who use their stage as a platform to open discussions about toxic masculinity, to showcase how ridiculous men can be sometimes. And I understand that, because there's drag queens who do the same thing only for women. Totally get that. That's not Fox. I am always trying to make sure that I'm portraying the positivity of male life. And if I'm not doing that, then I wouldn't be Fox. There's a couple of like amazing male performers who I am going to get to work with and perform with in the upcoming future, and I'm super pleased that like I'm being lumped into these categories from doing the pageants, from doing drag, where I am competing against men who see themselves as men, and it's not I'm going to swing my dick this way, swing my dick that way. It's just we're all performers in this space, and I've encountered a lot of positivity with Fox. Not just from women. Like, I've definitely encountered men who are very happy to meet a guy like Fox. I have men who, like, they just never knew that like, I happened to dress as a cis woman during my non-Fox times, and they were like, man, you're cool. You're just mad cool. And I love that type of banter, to be able to talk with another. I had one guy buy me a drink, and he was not necessarily interested in me in a sexual manner, just, you know what, dude, you're cool. Let me get you a drink.
Let's chill,
like, okay,
yeah.
Cool. And we ended up talking about being from Missouri and all sorts of, but just had a great night. And there was no, like, I got to do this or I got to puff up my chest higher. And I was like, the fact that you can have that regardless of what you know or don't know makes me really, really happy about the future of how masculinity is going.
How do you view your sexuality when you're as Fox? Are you just the cool romantic, but no one can have you, or do you find that yourself more of a wolf? How are you in terms of your sexuality on stage as Fox?
So as on stage as Fox is full of charisma, is flirtatious, romantic, just right there with you.
But is there any follow-through?
Like, deep in your eyes. But that's the thing. I have had quite a few people across the sexual spectrum want to date Fox. And Fox is not ready to date. And it's mostly because I had not thought it was going to go to that place. And it's one of the, as I am really putting Fox out there a lot stronger this year and in the years to come, these are thoughts I need to really have, because the first time it happened where someone literally asked Fox out on a date, and it was after we met at a party, and they called me and were like, "Oh, I would love to take you out," and da-da-da. It took me aback because I was never thinking of anything more than Fox's stage presence. And it's not because they weren't amazing and humans. It was more of like, I have to have a discussion with myself before I can bring you into this, because I don't know what I want, and that's too upsetting to bring somebody in the middle of this, and I don't know where I'm going or what I'm looking for from this side of my performing.
Right.
So it's possible right now. Fox is not necessarily dating. He is definitely a flirt. He will definitely make out with his fair share of folks across everything. Anything more than that has not happened and will not happen until I have decided what I want from Fox and what I want from someone in my life who has only seen Fox. 'Cause that was the other thing, is most people had not necessarily met Fox because Fox was not as prevalent as he is now. So when it happened, Fox was still, for all intents and purposes, fledgling. He had not won anything. He had not had any name recognition to himself. And so it was good that I was like, oh, wow, it just happened. And you're not trying to get anything because I ain't got nothing.
But you had that mystique that was alluring.
Right. And so, nothing like, there was no gain like financial, performance, produce. There's nothing for me to get except for my, take me somewhere, hang out with me, which is beautiful. But I was like, okay, I need to have this deeper discussion with myself of like, is Fox going to be dating? And it's not one that I've come to a decision yet. It's something I also want to talk to my partners about, because I'm like, this would definitely be a new chapter.
Yeah.
One that we all have not decided on.
It'd be interesting to learn what of the qualities you can learn from Fox that you can carry into your everyday. Because I think a lot of times as performers, when we get the makeup on, when we get, our gig together, it gives us permission to behave either the way we would like to be or the way that we think that we're supposed to be. And eventually the way that we're supposed to be, that burns people out. It's inauthentic, it's obnoxious a lot of the times, and you can't live up to it. But if you can learn what you want to be, then eventually you can just become that. You can source it the right way. So it'd be interesting what that person or whoever else finds, and even what you find alluring in. I mean, because I think a lot of drag performers, we are into ourselves. A lot of burlesque performers are people who paint or have a certain look. We do that because we like it. And especially if we have an unconventional presentation, it's because we're feeling ourselves at the time.
Right.
I mean, I got to say, I know I may not be everyone's expectation or fantasy as Viktor Devonne with my painted face and my lipstick, but I love it. I think I look beautiful.
And I will say that even when I was doing things for burlesque and stuff, whether I had makeup on or not, I always was just, and I think just as a person, I feel my fantasy. It's more of, I'm always thinking, and this is probably a part of Fox and a part of my cis femness as well, but on the consequence of others in this scenario. Like I'm not against Fox dating, but I definitely don't want to lead somebody down such a path, and I'm like, this is too much for me.
Right.
Or to lead one of my partners who's like, oh, so wait, what? I have 3 amazing cis male partners that I love them to death, and they have been with me and supportive of all the crazy things. They've come and seen Fox perform, and they've cheered me on, and like I think I've borrowed clothes from some of them, if not all of them. They have definitely helped to create this this monster of a performer, and I love it. But as each thing has been created, they have been spoken to about it, and it's not so much a permission or a consultation. It's more of I want to hear what your thoughts are here. before I dive too deep, because we're in, I think because I'm poly, I bring on partners, and I use the term partner for somebody who is a life mate for me. So I would never want to start some journey that I left them in the dirt for, because they're going to come with me one way or another, whether it be to see me perform or support or, whatever it is, they're going to come with me. So I definitely want to hear their thoughts, their feelings, and how this might affect their heart if they see this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Have they ever given you feedback on your work, or do you try to keep your romantic life separate from your professional visage?
It's funny. So I would say that my nesting partner is the one who he kind of gives the most feedback, because he's here when I'm creating a lot of things or putting things together. But whether it be music, text for my bio, they've all given me some direction one way or another, like, oh, I really like that, or you might want to take that out, or even to the point that my nesting partner has gone ahead and been like, I was like, oh, I'm trying to jewel this jacket, I'm not sure what to do here, and he's like, I think that's good, but I don't know about these other, I'll do like a kind of a small smattering to let them see. He's like, yeah, I don't know about this one. I think this one might be better. And just helping me eyeball. And I think some of that is that because I'm feeling my fantasy, I can get in my head and be like, this is fantastic, without realizing what it looks like to the outside, to the unobserving, to not my eyes.
Right.
And so I love having their feedback. I love having their critiques, and they know that I'm open to those critiques. And it's not to say I'm definitely going to do it because they said. It's more of, I know that they're coming from a place of love and caring when they say it. But I will also go to other performers and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Because sometimes I need to hear the harsher part of this too, just to make sure that I'm always putting my best foot forward.
Who are some of the performers in nightlife that you either really enjoy working with, or that you can bounce off of, or that you consider sort of part of your inner circle?
I would say, Sweet Lorraine is my accountability buddy, and she is a phenomenal sounding board. She has really assisted me in creating Fox into this whole rounded person, which I don't know that I had him like that before. Even I was performing at Gen Con this year, and I wasn't 100%. I had an idea in my head, and I had a very specific idea about the way I was going to put this act together. And we started talking one night about this act, and the next thing I know, she, unbeknownst to her, because she's not into all of nerd culture the way that I kind of have myself ensconced in there, playing D&D and things, reading comic books, and she made the suggestion, kind of off cuff, just throwing things out there, well, what if you did it as Spider-Man? And I was like, I never thought about that. And then she goes, oh, well, wait, you said Superman? I was like, I said Superman, but I guess I could work. And she was like, oh, maybe I heard it wrong. I thought you said Spider-Man. And after she said it, the whole thing just opened up this whole new idea of possibilities. And, I was like, oh, I could do this, and I could do that, and da-da-da. And fast forward to then I got booked for FlameCon and did my Spider-Man act that I had done at Gen Con. And it just worked. It all, the music fell into place really easily. The storyline was right there, and all from just speaking with her and throwing that idea out there, because originally it was going to be Superman. That's where I was going to go. And then when she said Spider-Man, I was like, Miles Morales is out. This could be a whole thing. I think you've hit the nail on the head. And she was not keeping with Miles Morales necessarily. We've talked about it before. She was just throwing it out there, and she came from such a genuine, really fun place. That's the other thing, is I love talking to her because she's so fun about just chatting about crazy stuff. We started doing these every couple of weeks, we'll call and just talk about our art, talk about where we want to go, talk about our ideas, and literally just be each other's sounding board as performers, to the point that we feed off of each other's goodwill when something positive happens. Just so much great fellowship that's happening between two artists, and we both have just noticed how much further we've gotten with our artistic journey from just having somebody who's consistently like, oh, is that? Well, what if you did blah, blah, blah? Well, what about, like, or I'm feeling this kind of way. What are your thoughts here? Like having that person to just consistently talk to, huge difference. So Sweet Lorraine's one, and also super encouraging about all my crazy nerd stuff, even though she doesn't necessarily keep up with it, like I said, in the sense of, like, I don't consider her my type of nerd in the sense of she's playing D&D on Tuesdays or reading a comic book or going to certain cons and stuff, but she's definitely open to hearing about it and loves to talk about all things that have to do with art. As far as other people that I like to perform with, I kind of enjoy performing with everyone. There are very few people that I don't want to perform with, mostly because I feel like there are so many weird and wacky ways to present oneself, and seeing all the art gather together, it's like going to a museum for me. There's inspiration there. There's definitely a lot of love and camaraderie, and I love seeing people I haven't performed with in a while, and just kind of like reconnecting and stuff. Another very close, amazing friend of mine is Bella LeBlanc, who's out of the Maryland area, and she has just been encouraging and me as a performer since we met. She booked me out in D.C. for the Beer Baron. I think she's like one of the first people to book me out that way. And from that meeting, we have grown to just be family. Like, I go to her place for Christmas, and we always catch up, and we always talk. And I really love that that we are two different types of performers. She's very she has a nerdy style, but it's very clean and classical style at times to me, even when she's doing some of the quote unquote nerdier things. And she's never been like, oh, you have to do it this way. She's always ready to throw out a new idea. Just same as Sweet Lorraine. I try not to surround myself with yes men or yes folks who are just going to like pat me on the head and tell me what a good job I've done. People who are going to challenge my ideas. People who are going to say, I don't know about that, because it makes such a big difference. Like, I'm that person after every pageant. I'm like, can I have my judges' critiques? Because I really get a lot from that and from what they saw. I do get those judges who are like, ready to tear me to shreds and have torn me to shreds, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they didn't see it. And so it makes me question, it makes me think harder, how can I help them get to that place? What did I miss? Judges' notes are really important. And so the people that I would say are my inner circle are all people who feel open enough to tell me, no, that's not going to work, or no, that's not what I got, and know that I want it, and they know that I want to hear those things, and why is a big part of why I keep them around.
We've made difficult decisions.
And there are still more ahead of us.
2 people aren't enough to save the galaxy.
We need the toughest,
Smartest.
deadliest allies.
We need you.
We need you to join us.
And listen to Reignite.
A certain point of view podcast about storytelling
Love.
and Mass Effect.
Join us every other Thursday as we fight for the fate of an entire galaxy.
You can find us everywhere you get your podcasts.
Or at certainpov.com/reignite.
We're counting on you.
We should go.
Well, when you are competing in these pageants, because you obviously you said 2019 Game Changer won 3 major titles in a very short amount of time. We're only in August while we're recording, so you still got more of the year to do. That's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I know it's also been like a running start, and you've been doing this for quite a while, so you're seasoned, but also you're getting fresh attention, and that's a very nice. You know, it's a good feeling to know that you're not a flash in the pan because you've already established yourself. But when you're getting those critiques and you're processing them and you either are saying, okay, this is how I can adapt that, okay, this is how I'm being perceived, okay, now that you have found your way onto the judges panel for certain things, and as a lot of people know, you win a title a lot of times that qualifies you to suddenly get these judging opportunities as well because you become an authority. How do you try to look at somebody else's work? And I know you're a fan of drag, and I know you're a fan of performance, so you're already coming from a place of appreciation. What have you learned on the opposite side of things about how to channel your critique?
One of the things I've really since I appreciate the critique, I always want to give it, but I'm also very aware of not mentioning the positivity makes the critique really harsh, and so when I'm on that judges panel for anything, I try and make sure I highlight the things that are done so right, like, ooh, you did that so right. But this part was not as right as this. Like for one of the pageants I was doing, there was a singer, and he had a glorious voice. Oh, just beautiful voice. And it was clear from his diction that English was not his first language.
Okay.
So what he did is he did half of the song in Spanish and the other half in English. But because his English was not as strong as his Spanish, it kind of broke a little bit on that when he switched over to the English. And one of the things I told him, I was like, sir, let me tell you something. I think that your voice is glorious. I could have listened to you all night. But what I feel like you have the potential to just lean into the Spanish that I know you love. And I was like, I felt it the whole time. Even though I was like, my Spanish is rusty at best, so I can't say I understood every word, but I was just right there with you. But the dictation on the English is not as strong, and it came across not as strong because of the amazing dictation and velvetiness and like feel of the Spanish. And critiques like that, I think, are very golden because whether you take it or not, it is a critique that works for and against you. Either you're going to lean in and realize like, oh, okay, I need to either work harder on my English, or I need to, lean into my Spanish or whatever it is, but you have choices there with that type of critique. Whereas if I just told you, you have a nice voice, but I didn't like your English, you got, like, wow.
Where do you go from there? Yeah.
Where do you go from there? So making sure that when I'm on that judge's side and I'm able to give critiques or even write down critiques, I'll go so far as to make sure I'm listing those positivities with the things that are not as positive, because they're not really negatives. They're opportunities to improve. And so I'd never want somebody to walk away and be like, oh, man, that one judge hates my guts. That's not the point. The point is that cutting you from this particular category, or you didn't do as strong, but this is what I would have loved to see here from you, whether I'm interviewing, whether I'm, doing a live category, whatever it is. I want you to walk away and be like, I made a choice. This is how I could have changed that choice. Is that a choice change I want to do later? If I don't, judge be damned. But if you do, you have the tools to go ahead and make that change.
It's a very nuanced direction, and I have a feeling that if that person is receptive to it, they'll get it. But that's also so much to hope that person understands in such a short amount of time. But I mean, obviously, you are a symbol of someone who has worked for a substantial amount of time. You're now getting this recognition. Not to say that you weren't getting acknowledgement in the past, but you're getting sashes, you're getting crowns, you're getting trophies. So these are medals. So these are, I think, there might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, because my experience in particularly in drag is colored by my work in burlesque. There seems to be I want it now and I need it now, and it's partially entitlement, and it's partially because if I don't get it now, no one will care about me in a year. So there's like a fear in not being acknowledged.
Right.
Would you say that's a fair assessment?
I would say that is. I was actually one of the people who I think is very much an icon as a performer, like somebody who I just think is an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
I have not performed with them, is Pearl Noir. And one of the things that I was listening to Pearl talk about just kind of life lessons and stuff in general. Missa Blue, who's from, I think it's London or Germany or something, had set up a kind of call-in thing with Pearl where you could like send her questions that she was answering. And one of the things that I took away from the talk I was listening to that she had done, and she did this months ago, I kind of save stuff, and then as I'm at work, I'll listen to things. One of the things I took away was she said that there's these microwave moments that a lot of young performers seem to get into. And to me, it's not just burlesque.
Oh, sure.
Where they see, like Drag Race, where somebody's just started and they got onto Drag Race, or somebody just, came out of the woodwork and they got into a movie as an actor or whatever. And so people start looking for that type of opportunity instead of wanting to put the work in. And I will say, for myself, I put a lot of work into performing, regardless of the style. I put a lot of work into performing. And now that I'm seeing all these things kind of pop up to fruition, I'm not afraid of, of anyone snatching a crown or not winning. I'm always driven to have done my best. And if I have the opportunity to work with someone or to get some sort of coaching or something to better equip myself to put my best foot forward, I'll do it. When I did Mr. Nerd New York NY, excuse me, I hired a coach, a drag queen, to be my consultant coach person, and I showed them all of my outfits. I definitely went over a lot of stuff with them that I don't know that every pageant king's kind of laundry list of things they do. But for me, I was like, I don't know why I would ever not do that when I have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's done pageants or who is a pageant person and who can walk me through this a little better. And I know that there is definitely that mentality of like, oh, I got to get it now or it's never going to come. But I'm, from what Pearl was saying, that slow simmer is really worth a lot. Like, it took me 6 months to get myself ready for the Mr. Nerd NY. It was 6 months of working with the seamstress, working with the wig person, picking out the characters I wanted, looking at swatches of fabric, deciding on which outfits were going to be done where, buying this thing, having it tailored, and the act as well. So when I put it all out there, it was a very complete nerdy thing from start to finish. And some people got it, some people didn't. Perfectly fine. But I'm really happy that I gave myself that time. And she was stating how, I know for her, she does not put, I think it takes her about a year to develop a new act. And I was like, oh, yeah, like after even that 6 months of like putting together my 4 looks, which was a lot. Putting together 4 looks in 6 months was really difficult. So I can't imagine how much better it would be if I only had one. But it's one of those things that I'm starting to change my focus of like, instead of putting out a lot of acts, I have the ones I have here, and I'm going to be cultivating those. I'm going to be really massaging and working with the dough and working with the clay to bake up something spectacular with it. And I am fine if people forget my name along the way, because once I get up on that stage and I put that well coiffed, beautifully gourmet artisan piece up there, it'll come streaming back, and that's what I want. I would, at this point in my career as a performer, I would rather get up on stage 2 or 3 times and be so unforgettable that it's like, oh, ooh, okay. Then get up on stage 5 to 10 times in a few months and put up things that are like, oh, okay, that was cool, that was nice. And it's kind of changed the way that I like accept my gigs, and I'm looking at work and stuff like that, because I'm not trying to have those microwave moments or get my name out there very quickly. I'm on a slow simmer, and I can't say that every performer needs to be like that or is like that. I know for me, I'm in my slow simmer mode, and this crockpot's not necessarily whistling. It's not necessarily finished yet, but once it is, it's going to be delicious.
I love it. Well, thank you for walking me through all of that. Congratulations on the titles and the trophies that you've snatched so far, and for the future that is to come. Do you have any particular looks that you have in the works that you're excited that you're constructing right now that you don't mind saying?
Yes. So the next look that it's probably a good couple of years away, actually. But I don't know, it might show itself up in a year if I get all my ducks in a row. I really want to do a look for Mr. Nancy from American Gods.
Okay.
He is exactly up my alley there, and I really am trying to. Mr. Glass is already done, but that's another look that's near and dear to my heart. So it's so funny, because when Glass came out, I didn't see it because it wasn't out yet. So I started the costume before I saw the movie. So I saw the movie on my way to Gen Con. And I loved it. I loved the movie for the message it had. There was definitely some plot holes and some things that could have been better. But as far as that character, I was like, man, I'm not always the one to root for the villain, but man, I am on your side, dude. So I'm super excited about that one. And as I'm getting into a place where I am getting asked to host a few more things, that's kind of the one, especially now that Halloween's coming up, that's kind of where my head's at. Is like, that'll probably be the one that people will start seeing a lot more of, is Mr. Glass out and about. But in the future, I'd love to have a full look for Mr. Nancy from American Gods. It's to the point that I like some of his speeches have been so inspiring, and I'm like, dude, I totally want to do this. Like, I love that, and I love the idea of putting together a look for a POC masculine character. I feel like it's sometimes they're usually some sort of not sidekick, but there's some sort of sub character, like in the show or whatever it is. Like, Samuel Jackson was not the main character. I don't think any of the characters that I do are main characters, but they're also not to be forgotten how much they help to enhance the storyline and how much they move everything forward. And I love that I can showcase them for those moments. So, yeah.
Do you think part of the reason that you don't necessarily go for primary characters or lead characters is because, frankly, there are so few that look like you in media? Or do you find that the sub-characters speak to you more?
There's who is it? There is Luke Cage. There's some characters that I specifically just won't do because it's not that they don't look like me. It's more of I'm like, I'm not as excited. I have to have a bond with that character in the sense of there's something about them that I'm like, I can get behind those words. I can that philosophy gels with me.
Right.
I have not done any characters who haven't been POC, but
it's possible.
It's totally possible, but there are a ton of amazing drag kings, cosplayers who highlight those characters. There's a good number of Captain Americas. There's a good number of a lot of them. Even my Spider-Man, the way I do it is just a bit different, and because of that, the way I start my act, he's actually being arrested, which is not something that I think every Spider-Man thing has kind of issued about. Like, hey, you know what? If you read the comics, one of the things that he says, I think in his first couple comics where Miles was introduced, he says, I don't want to be known as the Black Spider-Man.
Right.
I want people to know that I'm Spider-Man who happens to be of a different, culture, because he's also Puerto Rican, and he's like, I'm not trying to lose that. There's even a portion about how there's immigrants who are, being detained, and he feels responsible from his Puerto Rican side, hearing about it from his mother. So, it's those moments that I'm are so important, but I never want anybody to skip over. And no, they're not the easiest, but I just don't want them skipped over at all. And so when I'm choosing my characters, that's where the decisions are coming from. It's not just what's popular, what do I look like. It's also what's speaking to me, what's something I feel strongly enough about that I want to speak on. Because to be honest, putting together the costume, picking up the music, learning it, lip syncing, all that, I won't feel like doing if I'm not excited about the character. And so if the character's not speaking to me, I'm not going to do any of it. I'm not going to do it well. So,
right, because a lot of people realize, drag performers and burlesque performers and nightlife people, we are self-financed. So we better love what we're doing, and we better love the look.
Exactly.
Otherwise, why are we spending that time and that money and that energy on it?
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's not a lot of characters who necessarily are chocolatey. Not as many as I want. I want them all to be all across the spectrum. But there are enough who have not been highlighted that I still have plenty to go. So there's always the possibility of me picking someone who is not a POC, but let me get to the POCs first and then
Absolutely
is out there. But there's plenty of unhighlighted and amazing actors and characters and stuff like that for me to choose from at the moment. But if that runs dry, or I feel like, hey, this is really speaking to me, I'll always go with what speaks and what's relevant in my heart over everything.
Well, thank you, Fox. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and going into it. And I really appreciate how seriously you take your work and your art, because I think a lot of times nightlife performers are sort of viewed as frivolous or that we're on the side of I don't know, maybe not deep thinkers or that we don't necessarily have to. But definitely I appreciate that there are so many levels and so many nuances to your character, and as we all know, we're all still in development, but you've done a lot of the legwork, and I appreciate that.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, folks at home, I will put in the footnotes all the ways for you to keep in touch with Fox Squire or any of the other identities that might pop up along the way. And that will include your Instagram, your Facebook, and find out what is next to be conquered. Because if 2019 is any indication, 2020 is going to be a humdinger, and I look forward to seeing how that shakes out.
Thank you.
So, thank you, everyone. So I'll talk to you soon, Fox. We will be rubbing elbows soon. I'll be back in New York in a couple of weeks and hope to see you and work with you soon. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.